morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Ishtiaq Ahmed, and I am a PhD candidate here at OSU. I'm talking about today about mathematics education for home for students with visual impairment. So before I start, I would like you people to quickly introduce yourself, just your name and your organization and your role in that organization, please.
How about we start down on the bottom and then we'll work our way up.
I can go first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello everyone, my name is Nasa Nabari. I'm one of the volunteers, but I'm a senior student majoring in neuroscience, and I'm part of the OSU student.
So, hi, I'm Gregory Simonian. I'm a PhD student as well in the Department of Astronomy.
Thank you.
We were doing
I'm Joe Pletcher. I work at Muskingum University. I work in the PLUS program, which is designed to help provide strategy embedded in content for students within the autism spectrum for specific learning disabilities or ADD.
Thank you. Please be brief, yeah.
I'm Caroline Kowalski. I go to Ohio State, and I also do C3D printing for the blind.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kumiko Sasato from Japan. I'm from NAOJ, National Astronomical Observatory Japan. I'm doing public outreach, and I'm developing some tactile model of the telescope with 3D printer.
Great.
Hi, I'm Kaisa. I'm going to be a fourth-year student in astrophysics at the University of Chicago, and I also work on a project helping to make astronomy accessible for the blind and visually impaired.
I'm Ethan Stamets. I'm a mechanical engineer at Cornerstone Research Group, which is a research company in Dayton.
My name is Sabrina. I just graduated from Ohio State, and I'm starting my PhD at University of Illinois Chicago to study ableism in nursing.
Thank you.
My name is Galina. I am a PhD candidate from Norton School of Architecture. My research is city planning and disability.
My name is Carol. I'm from the Hubble Space Telescope Project, and I'm involved in a project to use 3D printing, tactile 3D printing of Hubble data for visually impaired, blind, and anybody else who's interested in 3D representations of Hubble data.
Thank you.
My name's Em Souls. I'm a fourth-year student here at Ohio State, and I do research with Professor Heckler.
I'm Andrew Heckler. I'm a professor of physics at Ohio State University.
I'm Courtney. I'm a volunteer. I'm a student from the University of Illinois studying aerospace engineering.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Nebenko. I'm coming here on behalf of NASA's Wisconsin Space Grant Consortium. I'm also director of institutional research for Moraine Park Technical College.
Wonderful.
I'm Monica Romeo, and I am assistant dean of students at a college in New York, and I'm in charge of accessibility for all the students on our campus.
I'm Thomas Madura. I'm a professor of physics and astronomy at San Jose State University, and I also do 3D printing of astronomy models for students with visual impairments.
Great. Yeah.
My name is Andrea Stallman. I'm the STEM Education Program Manager here at OSU.
I'm Nicole. I'm a PhD student at University of Colorado Boulder, and my research is all about tactile graphics.
My name is Jason Nordhaus. I'm a professor of physics at Rochester Institute of Technology, and I teach actually one of our colleges there, which is the National Technical Institute for the Deaf.
Oh.
I'm Ashley Tracht, and I'm a TBI at the Ohio State School for the Blind. I'm Roseanne Hoffman. I'm the STEM project leader at the American Printing House for the Blind.
Kate Perry, I work at the American Printing House as project lead and a software engineer. I worked on the first topographic calculator and now the tactile graphics system.
Yes, yes.
My name is Jian. She's the last person. I'm a master's student and I'm doing a research on 3D models for blind.
Thank you very much. I have already given you the handouts, and if you just take a few minutes and read them through, and please share your thoughts just in 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So people are reading your If there is anyone who would like to share what you get from these notes, from these handouts.
I have something to say. You don't have to be cited to be great at math.
Great, great, yeah.
Caroline,
Mm-hmm.
even if teachers or you like don't think you can do some, you can study on your own and do really well.
Right.
I'm surprised to learn that Euler was blind. I've been hearing, I've heard that name with a lot of my classes. And
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting, I guess.
Yeah,
Interesting
yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your input. If you see, there are just 3 examples out of many blind mathematicians who really contributed significantly in the field of mathematics. But you just consider these 3 examples for the time being, and if you see Leonard Euler, for example, he went blind, and when he was working as a department chair, geographic department in St. Petersburg Academy. And there were 2 options for the administration, maybe, okay, gentlemen, you are blind, your services are no more needed, that's it. And the other option was that he would have been supported properly, and that's exactly what they did. And that institutional support was extremely important in terms of keeping him on his track, and at the very same time, you see 2 of his sons also supported him. That means family support is equally important. And he was able to publish another 400 plus works. I mean, that means that blindness should not be considered as a kind of restriction, and that doesn't inhibit you from doing mathematics or anything that you would like to do. In second case, if you see Nicholas Sanderson, he was denied admission from the University of Cambridge, and but he was interested in doing mathematics, and he developed his own tool. That means the way he wants to learn, he was able to devise a tool, and that really helped him getting through that process. And he then afterwards became a professor there and worked on a very important position there. So that also is an example that if you get the right tools, then you are still good to go. I mean, if you can access mathematical content, then that's okay. So blindness is no issue there. In the third case, Liv Seaman, who went blind at the age of 14, and there was there could be a possibility that parents might have they could decide that no, that's it, and mathematics is probably not for their son. But her mother, despite of the fact that she was not mathematician, she was not educator either, but she was still able to devise certain ways that could potentially help them communicate, both mother and son. And for example, they used different symbols like down arrow means intersection, up arrow means union of set, and then right arrow means subset. So these are the code words they developed, and then that child was not able to do mathematics, but he was one of those people who are considered, who actually contributed significantly in the field of topology. So he also became the head of that department of topology at the University of Moscow. So these examples clearly suggest that mathematics should not be considered for only sighted people, or there are not the visual ways of learning mathematics, but we can use other senses to do mathematics. So my topic here is that currently what is happening, that we talked about history. That means history has already established that mathematics is not for sighted people only, or it is not something impossible for blind people. Now, what is the issue current? What is the current issue? Why blind students are very much underrepresented in STEM areas. It has been revealed in the literature review that, for example, 45% of students, blind students, can graduate compared to 80% of the sighted people, because mathematics is one of their core subjects, and they cannot pass, they cannot score good marks to get through mathematics and to qualify for their diploma. Instead, they end up doing just getting a certificate from the school. So what are the issues? Then this is what I have been trying to explore, that what are the problems. So let's see. I have seen in literature that most of the educators actually have a deficit oriented approach towards students with visual impairment. They feel that they are incapable of doing mathematics, and probably mathematics is not for them, and it's considered just like, visual kind of subject. So also I have seen that there are people get these students actually are not being provided some alternative tools that could potentially help them. And most of the studies have been conducted related to the usability of assistive technologies, maybe educators' perspectives, maybe on the inclusion experiences, maybe they were conducted on their social skills. But there have been very few studies that have been conducted that could explore that what are the best means of communication, what the students themselves say, what are their perspectives, what is their point of view in learning or studying mathematics. So based on this deficit thinking, they are provided very limited opportunities, and there is a significant achievement gap. According to one study, 75% of students are one grade behind their sighted peers. And according to another study, 20% of visually impaired students are behind 4 or 5 grades as compared to their sighted peers. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, that there is very little research that exists on the experiential aspects of students with visual impairment. And I have found only 3 studies. For example, Levi conducted a study in 2009 involving 2 students with visual impairment who were like 1 or 2 grader student, and she interviewed educators. Also, she interviewed their parents, and that was a kind of case study, and formulated and reported her findings. And there is another study, they are almost similar. There is another case study that was conducted in 2007 by Tanti, who actually interviewed a student who was high schooler, and she conducted 2 interviews, but also conducted some informal conversations and also analyzed the study material. The third study is was conducted by Marcon et al. In 2013 in a Brazilian university. They studied a student whose name was Mara. Mara was undergrad student, and she went blind when she was studying there. She was still she was still kind of interested in doing mathematics, but because she had lost her eyesight, she was perceived differently. What researchers did was that they conducted interviews from her mother, from the staff members, from the professors, and from the administration. So all of the studies have found that if individualized instruction is provided, if their individual needs are met, then these students can really do mathematics. So the only thing is that you need to devise certain ways. You have to communicate very closely with the students in order to best understand their needs, because it has been frequently mentioned in the literature that you should prefer students' needs. I mean, for example, Thompson, 1988, suggests that a student feels stronger when he or she would yes, this is what I would like to do, this is how I understand better, or things like that. So based on this, this situation, this is very unexplored area, and I feel that there is research needed, and I'm proposing this study. And now let me tell you what are the purposes of my study. So I would like to explore students' experiences and perception regarding their mathematics education. Also, I would like to see how students with visual impairment are best supported by their educators and by their parents by providing them alternative means. Also, how can they, this study will also try to understand the demands that students may have based on their self-expressed needs. So these are the 4 questions I would like to answer here. First question: how do students with visual impairments perceive and describe their mathematics learning experiences across residential and regular school system? in the United States. Question number 2, how educators position these students as mathematically competent and how they describe or report on their experiences with these students. And question number 3, how family members or caregivers perceive and report on their experiences when supporting their children in mathematics education. Question number 4, how multiple factors impact students' mathematics education across residential and regular school settings. Go to the previous slide. Yeah, that's okay. So I'm using disability studies framework. As at the very outset I mentioned institutional support. So it's not all about the individual. It's a kind of social endeavor. That's very important. And I'm using this framework because disability studies framework offers a counter narrative to the deficit-based notion. That means that students with visual impairment should not be or may not be considered as mathematically incompetent. And this frame is also important because this values the experiential aspects of students. So it values how students want to learn. That is the best strategy instead of teaching them with a traditional method, devise some innovative techniques that could potentially help them in their mathematics discourse. Also, this framework is important because this includes students with visual impairment when making decisions related to their accommodations and support. Design of the study is, of course, this study is qualitative in nature, and I will use a multiple case study design. There will be 4 cases developed, 2 from residential schools and 2 from regular school settings, where each case is comprised of student, teacher, and their parent or caregiver. So 3 people will be in one case, 2 from regular school settings and 2 from residential school setting. I will collect data using demographic surveys. I will also conduct phone interviews with all the participants. And then I will also take field notes. And lastly, I will conduct a students focus group so that students may be able to share their thoughts openly, and that will help me understand their different perspectives. Data will be analyzed, of course, using disability studies lens. And in order to code data, I will use first coding cycle followed by the second coding cycle as suggested by Saldana. During the first code, I will use in vivo, emotion, value, and causation codes. And during the second cycle coding, I will specifically use focused and axial as well as theoretical codes. So the purpose of the second cycle coding is to transform my codes and subcodes into categories and subcategories. and then progress towards like major themes or concepts, or potentially into a new theory. So this study has some important implications. For example, the study will will collect some essential informations and will form pedagogy, theory, and best practices. It will also inform stakeholders about the best learning practices or the preferred learning practices of students. It will help them develop a kind of inclusive curricula, as well as it will guide them to do some staff development, capacity building, so that certain educators could be trained so that they can feel like they can accommodate students with visual impairment. They should not be scared about what they are doing. Instead, they should have some more confidence and some important tools to help and support these students in mathematics learning spaces. Lastly, of course, there are some limitations. As I mentioned that I will develop 4 cases. That means that sample size is not that big, and the results cannot be perhaps generalized. And when we talk, as I mentioned, that I will have students focus groups. Sometimes focus groups are intimidating for some students because they feel reluctant sharing their thoughts in the presence of other students. Sometimes they just agree with the dominating view and they don't expose, or they don't share their own perspective. Another limitation of the study is that, teachers, we are all like teachers and working in different organizations, and we are reluctant sometimes sharing some two thoughts, I would say, criticizing policies, institutional policies, because we feel that it might negatively impact our workplace, or maybe it could negatively impact our job or something. So that could potentially be one of the limitations of this study. And fourthly, as I mentioned, I will be conducting interviews over the phone. And probably this will not give me an opportunity to interact with my participants directly and to develop a rapport with them, and also it could potentially impact the responses I will get from my participants. So these are the few limitations of this study. And here are the references for this presentation, and thank you very much. So kind of you, and thank you very much for your attention. I think we have some time. If you would like, I will take your questions, or if anybody wants to share their thoughts and ideas, any comments, so please welcome.
So there's one person in the back, and we have 2 other attendees here.
I'm Andrew Heckler from Ohio State. So I appreciate your point that sight is neither necessary or sufficient for doing mathematics. I'm just wondering if there are reports from the mathematicians that are visually impaired that have seen it as an advantage or it has provided insights or advantages that have allowed them to do mathematics than otherwise if they weren't visually impaired?
That's a very good question, and honestly, I personally feel that because I experienced a situation when I was sighted and currently I'm blind, so I rely more on my memory. For example, I was taking very few tips from my presentation, from my slides, and that means memory really helps you. And I personally feel that memory is something very important. If you, the examples I have given, so if you see the first example, for example, Leonard, he has some amazing memory, so no doubt about that. But that also means that this memory or other potentialities of these people should not be overshadowed when they went blind. For example, I mean, Leonard was so amazing in terms of his memory, but once he lost his eyesight, that doesn't mean that he should have been terminated or sacked from his work. So I'm not sure though that if it happens with everyone, but I believe that mathematics is all about thinking, and I have seen some very interesting examples, and I myself did mathematics with having no vision or low vision. So I believe that if it doesn't help in certain ways, but at the same time, I would say it doesn't inhibit you, at least, yeah. I hope this helps.
I could make a comment on that. There have been some studies that show, at least for some individuals who are born blind, that their abstract thinking skills are actually higher, and also their ability to understand different length scales. So really, really small scales and really, really large scales, sighted individuals seem to struggle with because we base things around everyday experience, whereas at least, it's not definitive, but at least in some cases, there has been some evidence that people with visual impairments might be slightly better at understanding these different length scales compared to sighted individuals who kind of have this bias of grounding things in everyday experience.
Yes, I mean, I didn't actually see a particular study that has differentiated between their conceptual understanding in terms of their congenital blindness or adventitious blindness. But you're right. I mean, for example, if a person is blind by birth, then definitely he or she develops his tactile skills or fine motor skills for better than maybe other people who rely on sight. So yeah, it could potentially something that can be very useful for them. Yeah.
So we have one attendee here that he has.
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So in your study, are you going to distinguish between blind students that have gone to a blind institution versus mainstream versus those who are going to, like in my case, I started college when I lost my sight. So are you going to distinguish between when they lost their sight, what help they had, and different types of schools they went to?
You're right. I mean, that's why I'm doing demographic survey also, because I would like to recruit different students with different backgrounds, maybe racial backgrounds, as well as the time period, or when did they lose their vision, and what was the implications, maybe.
Well, the reason I'm asking is,
yeah,
students that are mainstream, sometimes, for instance, long division, the teacher might say, well, you're blind, why don't you just use the calculator and figure it out. But when you get into later derivatives and stuff, long division becomes important with quadratic equations and things. So I'm wondering if a student goes through a blind school situation, they have more stable background than they would if they go through a situation where the teachers aren't used to blind students.
Yeah. And that is exactly what I'm looking for, like, what kind of responses, what kind of attitude they experience from different people. So it's going to be the first study that will address these issues. Like, I have not found any study that addresses this issue, because this is extremely important to understand what kind of attitude these students experience. For example, if as a student I'm asked, okay, I know you are very brilliant, whatever, but I'm just wondering, you might feel difficult. And this is a kind of implicit bias, I would say. It really haunts you. I mean, the person might be asking you with a very good will, but at the very same time you reevaluate yourself. Oh my God, I'm not able to do it. Maybe she's thinking she suggested me like a sincere friend or sincere teacher, but that, on the other hand, this also is a kind of thing that she is suggesting you not to do that. Because in certain studies, I mentioned one of the study about Marcon and others who conducted, and one of the student who was undergrad student there, and she was very interested to do mathematics, but the professors told them nobody did mathematics who was blind. So we're just wondering, I mean, unless you will not provide these people with an opportunity, this will not even expose that institution, what kind of arrangements they should do, what kind of alternative means. So this exposes everyone. So opportunity is the key here. But the only thing is that we are probably not willing to give opportunities, or if we are willing to give them opportunities, maybe we will impose our own wills that this is what generally people will do. For example, I was talking to a professor when I was taking his class, and I first showed up and I told him, I know there was a student a couple of years ago, so I know your notes. Please don't, I don't need to have any special meet. I do know your needs. And when I was, for example, in a class, he said, okay, I have brought some large pens for you, Ishtiaq, and here are the large pens. Then I went to that professor I talked to. So I said, I can't read large pens. Really? So then I asked, you don't know what my needs are. So that's what I was trying to have a separate meeting with you. So that means that we sometimes feel that we know everything, but we actually don't. So every blind student itself is a kind of different from others. I mean, it's not homogeneous group. They are heterogeneous. Everybody has different needs. Yeah.
Is there, yeah.
I just have a question.
Please.
So I'm not really familiar, it's one of the things I'm really interested in is, so how is mathematics currently taught to students with visual impairments? What tools and techniques, besides things like Nemeth Braille that I'm familiar with?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I mean, again, it depends, because it's a mutual understanding between teacher and student. It's a lot depends on the student, but at the very same time, it lot depends on the teacher, especially when it comes to inclusive setting. In blind schools, I have seen they use different different tools. Actually, I already conducted literature review using different assistive technologies, and in 2018, and I found that there are very, very few tools that are actually available that can really help those students to be a part of that community of their class. For example, we reviewed assistive technologies from 2002 to 2017, and we could find only two tools that are helpful in the true sense. So using SAMR model, for example, substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition model. So that was our finding, that if we can really transform this whole mathematics teaching and learning, we really need to develop certain tools. We have to give them the right tools. I mean, the right tools at the right time and used in the right way is something very important. So again, I mean, it's not a kind of one-size-fits-all kind of technique that is being used currently. So everybody is different, depends. So as I mentioned earlier, that there are some students who are low vision, so they can benefit from large print as well. So as far as blind students are concerned, they can use Braille, Nimat code, and things like that, or other tactile kind of things. Sometimes I have seen using these students like 3D printing, etc. That's a very good technology. I think if we work on that technology, that could potentially help these students significantly in doing mathematics.
Thank you guys for listening. I think it is time for the coffee break, but if anyone would like to stick around and ask questions, you are more than happy to.
Sure.
Can we give a round of applause?